Tonight is what we have titled our evening, where actually new school board members, also current, you might learn a couple things. But, it's a work session, school board meeting. So as we're going through the evening, if any of you have any questions or comments or like more information, anybody around the table, don't hesitate to stop. We have scheduled 2.5 hours. It's my hope that it doesn't go 2.5 hours. So if it's much shorter than that, then we have met the objective along the way. But that's what my intention is to go shorter than that this evening. I know a couple of you have some previous engagements and will need to leave, and I respect that. So please make sure that you take care of some of those personal needs too. We will not stop. If you need to take a break for a couple of minutes, please feel free to do so, but we're going to try to keep on rolling with this. My intention is, again, not to take the entire time that we have allotted. Okay, that's why we put so much in writing for you, all of you, is so you can read some of this, and then if you have some questions, feel free to follow up with me. So, what's that? Yeah, the facilities are just right down the hall here. Let's start here by just introducing ourselves, if you would please. I think we all know, but those who are watching at home and online may not know all of us around the table here. Don't worry, no matter what side of the table you're on, cameras can pick you up and see you. So that's why we're intentionally sitting the way that we are within that too. So let's just start right here to my left. Mrs. Gray, you made eye contact with me, so you're the lucky one. You get to go first. Why don't you we'll just go around the table. Why don't you introduce yourselves to us, and then we'll just go right around the table then. So Cindy, we'll start with you.
Cindy Gray, Executive Secretary to the Superintendent.
Tim Allen, District 4 Trustee.
Carrie Heim, District 8.
Jay Peters, Director of Elementary Education.
No, if you want to introduce yourself, a little bit about yourself, Archie, that's okay. Yeah, you got to hit the button. When it goes green, you're good. Thank you. Oh, there you go. I'm sorry. I should have said that, Archie. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I grew up in Union Township and have lived in Huntington County all my life.
Good.
I started public school in 1954 as a first grader.
Uh-huh.
I was in first grade 2 years.
That's okay.
They didn't have kindergarten there.
Yep.
I graduated about the time the schools consolidated here.
Mm-hmm.
My son went through high school here, grade school and high school.
Good.
And my two grandchildren, Quentin and Jillian, went through. And they had a wonderful musical theater program. I thought I'd plug that.
Good. Good. Thank you.
And I taught 5th and 6th grade to start with, and taught as a classroom teacher 29 years. I've had a lot of other experiences in life, but my wife said not to go on too much, so.
Okay.
Aaron.
Okay, good.
Aaron Carl, candidate for District 6.
Yes?
Lifetime Huntington County resident and born and raised here, so.
Thank you. Thank you. Yep.
Dave Van Gorder, candidate for District 1. I've not been a lifetime Huntington resident, but I do enjoy it here.
Yep.
We moved here in 2020, built during COVID. My 3 kids, well versed in all the activities of Huntington and keeps us busy.
Well, good. Thank you.
My name is Kathy Schock-Swingle. I was born and raised and educated in Huntington County. Lived here all but 20 years when my husband's job took us to Lafayette.
Yep.
Came back after that was over, and I'm here now. And ex-foster parent, raised 3 sons.
Good.
So that's it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Mr. Hines?
Curtis Ray Hines. I've lived here, all 47 years in District 1, which is the seat that I'm running for. Went to Huntington County Community Schools and competed here in athletics. And then I went to Huntington University, started coaching here in athletics, coached here 18 years. Won 7 regional championships in cross country. Was 4th in the state meet in cross country. Taught in this building for 20 years. Had all effective and highly effective recommendations. And I'm a landowner in Huntington County. I've been in the building here and like I said, been in education a long, long time. So I feel like I've got a pretty good perspective on things in this community. So.
Okay, thank you.
Mike Richard, I am running candidate for District 6. I'm a lifelong Huntington County resident. Took some time away when I was in the service in the Air Force for a few years and moved back about 12 years ago with my daughters and wife, where my kids are able to attend the same corporation that I grew up in and graduated from this school also. And Mr. Lynch said he went to Union. I was one of the last classes of Union in first grade, I believe, before I moved over to Lincoln Elementary School back in the day. So, yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Chuck Brimberry, Director of Secondary Education.
I'm Kevin Yarger, School Board Vice President and representative of District 6.
Good.
Matt Melcher, I'm School Board District 1.
Okay.
Becky Smith, Virtual Chief Financial Officer.
Ryan Wall, District 7. Like several others, I've lived in Huntington all my life, except for the time I spent down at Purdue University in West Lafayette.
Matt Roth, in my 10th year on the board. I think Gary and I are the longest serving members right now. District 2, and not a lifelong resident of Huntington, but lived here since '99, call it home. Graduated from Homestead when it was the size Huntington North is now, and Huntington North was the size Homestead is now. Taylor University, IU Bloomington, here since '99 with my wife Laura, who's an educator, and our 3 kiddos.
Thank you. John Trout, Superintendent, 1980 graduate of Huntington North High School. Lived in this community my entire life. Daughters both graduated from here. And just proud to be here, thrilled to be here, as a matter of fact. This evening, what we have for you here, if you're watching online, there is a binder that at each place that each one of our current school board and prospective school board members have. What I'll do is, in the table of contents here, is that there are quite a few pages covering a variety of topics here this evening. The reason that I do it this way is that I want you to have something that you can take home, that you can read, that you can study. I fully expect you to have more questions way beyond this evening, and at the end of the evening I'll be sure to tell you how to get a hold of me, and so that if we need to have either an individual or small group meeting to go through this information in more detail, I'll be more than happy to do that. If you're watching online or if you're in the audience here, this is a sample of the table of contents that is before each person here around the table this evening. We will obviously not go through all of this. There is just no way to do that in one setting, let alone probably 2. So I'm just going to pick up on my section a couple of the highlights that I want to discuss this evening and see if you have any questions along the way. At the very top there, you can see that we start with the strategic plan. This has been recently done as the spring. If you turn to page 1, the handwritten pages at the bottom is what we will follow. That will show you this plan. This plan is a 5-year plan, which begins this year, lasts for 5 years through 2029. And if you look at page 2, you can see right there all of the different aspects of the strategic plan that we cover. We deal with everything, and it shows you the process that we followed. Everything from don't go too fast on me, Cindy, right there, on a broad base, excuse me, planning committee, which consisted of community members, teachers, staff that participated in this process. If you look at that, you can see everyone who participated, the process in which we followed. If you look at the third table, you can see the strategic plan team members, how we helped develop the core values, the vision, the mission, living and embedding our values, and right on and so forth. If you go to the handwritten page at the bottom, which is if you go to the strategic plan on the 12th page, that's what I want to highlight for you here this evening, okay? The school board on page 12 of the strategic plan has a set of goals that they have as a board. And I'll read these so people who are watching online or in the audience can follow along with this. But the HCCSC Board of School Trustees has recently reaffirmed their goals as part of our strategic planning process. There are 5 in which they have developed. Number 1 is to ensure the continuous improvement of student academic achievement for all. The second one is to ensure the school amplifies a safe, secure, and effective teaching and learning environment. The third one is to ensure parents, businesses, and community members are actively engaged in the educational process. The fourth is to ensure district-wide fiscal responsibility along with wide stewardship of resources. And then the fifth one is to ensure adequate support of teachers, support staff, and administrators. Then if you go, we flesh all of that out in this entire plan. The one piece that I want to highlight for you as a board this evening, if you flip on over to in the strategic plan, okay, it's near the end of this strategic planning document. You are going to start watching us, and you'll be intimately involved if you are elected to this process. So I'm going to have you turn to page 44 of the strategic plan. Don't watch the screen if you have vertigo, okay? So, and obviously we could go through each one of these pages with this, but what I want you to see is that one of our targets is 5.1, which it says by 2027, 100% of the HCCSC physical assets are managed efficiently and effectively. And we list out how we're going to do that in the process that we're going to follow. And then later this evening, you're going to learn more about what we do fiscally in our district from Mrs. Smith. But I just wanted to draw your attention to some of the fiscal pieces of this plan and just to have you dive into them a little bit more along the way. You'll notice, for example, if you go to page 46, near the bottom, or excuse me, near the top at 5.3, you'll see that we have very specific goals fiscally that we're trying to achieve. By 2027, achieve and maintain a cash balance of 15% of the education-operation fund expenditures while ensuring at least 75% of the funds are devoted to instruction. And our ultimate goal is to maintain a $2 million cash balance. And so when Mrs. Smith is going through some of her things this evening, you'll be seeing how we're trying to meet some of those expectations that we have along the way. Jay and Chuck will share with you this evening about what we're trying to do academically, which is sprinkled throughout this strategic plan also. But I just wanted you to see the details, some of the details that directly impact you as a board and your engagement and involvement in that process. So does anybody have any questions or comments that you want to make? I'm going to pause here just a second to see if anybody does. If you do, please make sure you hit the button in front of you that turns to green. So, Mr. Lentz.
Yes, you mentioned they're talking about finances, correct? Budget and so forth. I had asked a couple board meetings afterwards. I wanted to start with a big picture of the finances in the school corporation, where the money comes from and where it goes out. And I asked about pie charts. And at the last meeting that I attended in person here, I was given some very nice notes about that so I could find the pie charts. Now, I've sat through board meetings, and every penny and every dime in a very complex set of spreadsheets is listed, every half cent. But yet, in recent years, $500,000 went missing. So they can account for pennies, but not millions of dollars. I think that's a problem. I don't know where that all is right now. But the problem, I think, can be illustrated by the fact that my notes say, this is what I was told to do to find the pie chart on the web. Go to departments. First you go to Huntington Community Schools, and then departments. And then from departments, scroll down to school board. Scroll down then to current board meeting agenda. Continue scrolling down until you get to meetings, regular board meetings. Then scroll down to view the agenda. Scroll down to finances. Scroll down to select financial report. And a couple other scroll downs. I didn't get quite that far. I wasn't able to accomplish getting all the way. And I think this is not a problem just for me. I think it's for the general public. They need a big picture of where the money's coming from and where it's going. And obviously there's a problem that's bigger than the eye of a needle when it comes to $500,000 going missing. So I guess I don't have a question at this point because I don't know what is going on. I'm not able to get these big picture type of items, but one of my goals would be to get that big picture and communicate it to the citizens of my District 6.
Okay, thank you, Archie. Becky, you just want to make a couple comments? I know we're going to get into this a little bit during your section, but before we get there, you just want to make a couple of points here?
Sure. We did a whole, I would say, reorg financial submissions and transparency in the last year and a half. So monthly, we do share those pie charts in the major budgeted funds to the board and to the public. We do that on a monthly basis. And then we also do different presentations throughout the year. We have a mid-year fiscal presentation that we do. We even do presentations on ESSER and special grants. And then once a year, we do the 1st of February, I can't remember which board meeting that's at, and then we recap the previous year also and show all that information by pie charts and diagrams and things like that. So that is what we have done and changed over from the previous was just a simple page that gave cash balances, and that's all that the board and public was used to seeing. So since then, we have created all these reporting mechanisms and transparency for the community and the board in the last year and a half.
Appreciate that. I'm not able to understand all of that. Like I said, I was in first grade 2 years.
No, that's all right.
This is the last page I was able to access on your website.
Yep, that's for questions.
People, a couple there are very confused.
Mhm.
Questions, and that's where I still am.
Mhm.
But I like to find that big picture.
Absolutely.
One of the things I've done in life is I was assistant manager at Sherwin-Williams when I was downtown,
Yes.
and I balanced our books every end of the month
Yep.
and at the end of the year.
That's what we do.
I know that a difference of 17 cents could be $17,000, actually, a mistake by the time you track it down.
Correct.
And so that's where I'm at. I'm looking to be educated on this, and as I
Mhm.
get on the school board, and I get on the inside a little bit, I'm sure we'll be having conversations, and I want to communicate this above all to be able to communicate it to the citizens of my district.
Absolutely.
Right.
Sure.
Thanks, Becky. Mr. Lentz, what I will do for you is that the last couple of board meetings where we've done some of this, I'll print some of this off and I'll give it to you, okay? So, and you and I will have a conversation about that, all right? So we'll do that. We'll be very specific.
Yes, you said you would email me the pie charts, but I haven't got them yet.
Well, I'm going to bring them to you. So there you go. All right? Okay.
Mr. Trout, can I?
Yes, go
expand
ahead.
on
I'm
that
sorry.
just for a second?
Yeah.
Has the board or the administration identified like key performance indicators that where these are very transparent? It's like, okay, what is my attendance rate? What is my, here I have it written down, enrollment, attendance, graduation rates, et cetera, that is easily accessible not only to the board and the administration, but the public in general to say, hey, this is how we're doing. One place to say, hey, the health is good, it's trending up, trending down. I think that would be very beneficial as a person who just goes over the board reports every meeting, and I am still confused on where some of this money is coming, where we are as a corporation.
Yes. I mean, ADM, we're actually in Becky's presentation day, all those points that you just hit, we're going to be presented to you even today within that. There's different ways in which that can all be reported. How we're reporting it's what we're required to do by the state of Indiana along the way. We're making sure that we're aligned with all of that information, with what we're supposed to do and how we're supposed to do it. In the future, if the school board wants different reports other than what we're required to do and how we're reporting it, that can be done in a variety of ways. That can be done in a variety of ways. If you look at the strategic plan, many of the things that you're talking about is what we're trying to pull out. So what I'm saying is that we will be creating dashboards. Same thing as your key performance indicators. I'm actually working on those right now. So to take all that complex data and all that complex information out of the strategic plan and putting it in charts, putting it in graph form, putting it in whatever. So those will be, I call them dashboards. Different people with different businesses and different organizations can call them a lot of different things, but what we will be doing is reporting that to the board on a consistent basis, not only by district, but by building, by department, by whatever breakout that the board determines. And so I'm developing those right now. I just haven't given them to the current board yet because I'm going to ask them, okay, is this what you're looking for? Does it need to be done in a different way? But those are currently being developed now. I won't call them key performance indicators. I won't necessarily call them a chart or a graph, but I call them, they'll be dashboards that we'll refer to and look at and go with at all times. So I hope that helps a couple of those conversations along the way. In the meantime, if there's specific information that you want that you don't receive this evening or you don't see at a board meeting, don't hesitate to reach out to me. I'll be happy to give you what it is that you're specifically looking for in that. So, okay?
Thank you.
All right, anything else? Okay, if you turn to page 49, it's handwritten at the bottom on page 49. The next pieces of information are taken straight from the Indiana School Board Association. We are actively engaged in this association as individuals and as a board. If you come on the board, you will be seeing and hearing a lot about different aspects of what the roles of the board member are versus roles of administration versus roles of the superintendent. This page is one in which we will, starting in January, work through together as a new board is seated. And this is done in 4 different quadrants. So at the top left, or at the top, very top, it's this what this Indiana School Board Association calls the School Board Member Code of Ethics. This is what we as a board adhere to. And I'm not going to read all of this to you. These are some really interesting statements, ones in which I trust that you agree with most. You may not agree with all, and we can work through those. But the top left hand talks about a school board member should honor the high demands, should honor the high responsibility that membership demands. The basic function of the school board, of a school board member, is policy making. Not necessarily administration, but policy making. And by accepting responsibility of learning to distinguish between these 2 functions. Sometimes these blur, and we have to work through all these together. But in general, that's what we're talking about here. The second bullet point is what I respect about what we're currently doing here. By accepting responsibility along with fellow board members to ensure that the adequate facilities and resources are provided for the proper functioning of our schools. And you can see the rest of those down there. On the bottom left, it talks about here a school board member should demonstrate respectful relationship with other members of the board. We have been blessed since my arrival here to work through this together. We don't always agree. The new board won't always agree. But what's important is that we come together and we work together to find viable solutions along the way. It's hard sometimes when the board vote doesn't go your way. Is to go out and continue to publicly support the direction of the board, and that's difficult at times. That's hard. We've had to work through that ourselves from time to time when the vote doesn't go our way. But yet, as a board collectively, it's our goal to continue to move forward and support the direction and the majority of the board. And that's hard. Sometimes that's really difficult to do. And it takes a lot of conversations, right? I have talked with all of you individually on this piece. When the board vote didn't go your way, we have had some pretty intense conversations about, okay, what are we going to do moving forward? And we try to work through that as best we can. There's a statement in here that I personally have to remind myself with a lot of times, and just constantly remind not only this district but the previous districts I have been in, is by refusing to participate in irregular meetings which are not official. We can't do that. There's just no place for that with what any of us do. We try to work really hard. Like setting this meeting, I tried to find a night where most all of you could get here, and that's hard. People are busy. It's hard to do that, and we try to honor all of those pieces along the way. But on the top right, on this graph, on this chart here, on this page, this is what's vitally important, obviously, to me. You have your relationship with your colleagues, with your fellow board members, and then you have a relationship with me and other employees. And we will work through that. Sometimes you and I will agree on a lot. Sometimes you and I may disagree on a few things, and we try to come to an agreement, try to find the compromise, try to find where we can agree on. I work from this premise. This is my definition of compromise. Compromise is getting 85% of what you want and 15% of what you can live with. Many times I will ask you, I've asked each one of you around this table, tell me on this topic, what could you live with? I know what you want, but for us to come together as a group and do what's best for kids and staff, what can you live with? If you are fortunate enough to be elected on the board, I will guarantee you at some point in time, we will have this conversation. John, I just can't go there. Okay, I got you. Okay, but tell me what you could support. Where could you land and support this? And we'll see what we can do collectively as a board within that. I am constantly, and I get criticized for this once in a while, the 1, 2, 3, 4th bullet point is I work at this every week, every day of every week, is by striving to lead as a united team. That's my goal, is to try to have us work together, work collectively together. It doesn't mean that we always agree. There are times when we just don't. But my goal is, for the betterment of our students and staff, is do everything we can and everything I can to keep us united in our purpose, united in moving forward. Because if we can do that collectively together, then the beneficiaries are going to be everybody in our school district. And lastly, on the bottom right, you have big responsibilities as school board members to your community. This is heavy. This is a heavy lift for you. You will get people who will contact you, who will applaud you and agree with you. You will get people who contact you with just the opposite attitude. And I realize as a board member how difficult that can be at times for all of you. I believe in each one of those bullet points, and I know the difficult task you have, and I admire you for wanting to run for school board, because it's not an easy job, and you're not making a lot of money to do this on top of that. But let me tell you, I think the current board understands the deep respect I have, because I understand the many different ways you get pulled in the community. It's tough at times to sit on this side of the table. It's hard. But I will come alongside you and help you in any way, shape, or form that I have. So when you see that page, comments, thoughts, questions, I'm getting tired of talking. I'd like to hear from some of you. Comments, thoughts, questions. Okay, perfect. Okay, we're going to move on.
Sorry to be a little slow on the draw here, but I do have a comment.
Sure.
Well, first of all, do you press the button on this thing? No. Just press it once, or what?
You press it once. If the green light's on, Mr. Lentz, you're good to go.
It's on when the green light's on.
You're live.
Okay.
So.
Well, I think what I'm going to say touches on the material you just passed over. I wonder sometimes, having sat in the gallery back there and listened to the school board members and yourself and others, if you have lost touch, possibly to some extent, I think it's probably human nature, with what you all look like from the audience point of view. And I think that there's a feeling that there's a rubber stamp going on. It's just everybody votes yes on everything. I know that doesn't happen exactly that way, but what I'm saying is that's the way it appears. And there's a lot of emphasis on unity in here, and going along to get along is the way I would phrase it. I don't like to be contentious. My wife might disagree on that, but on the other hand, I don't think that there should be such an emphasis on unity when we need to bring difficult subjects to the table, and we maybe disagree vigorously at times on policy in order to get these things forward. So that would be my comment on that.
Yeah, and I go back to what I said before, is that my job as a superintendent, I take seriously, is that you will not find me, if you are elected on the school board, you will rarely find me bringing something forward that doesn't have the support of the board. That's the flip side of this coin. In the conversations I'm having with you, with the discussions that we have, if that's not going to be supported, it won't even make it to this table. And that's the difference. If I would bring all the things to the table that would be voted down or whatever was going to happen with it, I wouldn't bring it. It doesn't have the support. Why move forward with it? When something does get brought to the board, in the work sessions, many times we've had lots of conversations about it. An agenda item rarely gets to the board without it working through several processes to get to the point where it's at. I'm going back to that compromise statement that I made. I can understand from the public's perception that it might look like it's rubber stamped, but that's not remotely true, because what it has happened is we've taken that certain specific situation through various discussions, various different formats to reach the point where people are comfortable with what it is moving forward. And many times it dies before it ever comes to the board. And so that's the side of it that many times and I know the public doesn't see that, nor understands it at times, but I wouldn't put you, Mr. Lentz, in that position as a superintendent, that I know that the board's not going to support it. I'm not going to be that person that's going to bring it forward to make a point. I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't do that to this group. I wouldn't do that to any of you who got elected for the school board. Just wouldn't do it.
So if I understand you correctly, then a lot of these issues are hashed out and figured out at least partially before the board meetings take place among you all?
What I'm saying is that there's a lot of discussions that go on. I'm not going to hold illegal board meetings. I'm not going to hold illegal meetings. I'm not going to do any of those type of things. I'm saying to you, that's why, for example, that's why we went to a work session format this year. If you followed the flow of the work session, we usually talked about these agenda items at an open meeting before I would bring them to the next board meeting or a board meeting in the future. I want to see where people are at. I want to see where you as a board are going to land. What is it you're going to support? What is it you're not going to support? Let's talk about this. The main reason that I went to the work session format and then a board meeting format is so that I could see where the board is collectively as a group on this topic. That's why we try to do work session and then board meeting and then work session and then board meeting. Now, the last couple of months, because of the budget adoption, we haven't been able to do that. But I tried to anticipate things that we're going to be voting on in the fall and have those open discussions in the public to see where are you as a board. I think that you as a board would probably agree with me. We've had many of those open discussions along the way. It is not uncommon for individual board members and I to then to have conversations on top of that. I mean, I think that's my role. If somebody's struggling with a certain aspect, and each one, I can look at all of you and know what that has been around a table, I will go back to that person and say, talk to me some more about where you're at with X. I'm constantly in communication in one level or another, trying to make sure I understand where people are at. Okay? All right. One of your big, many times I'm asked by boards, what's my most important role as a board member? What's the most important job I have? It's a little weird for me to say this, being in this position, but I will tell you the most important position you have is hiring and firing a superintendent. If you want to know what I think your most important decision is as a board, it's who you hire and who you fire as your superintendent. I firmly, absolutely believe that. And so, from time to time, I'm asked about How do you draft a superintendent's contract? The next several pages in your binder talks about legally how that happens. I cite some Indiana code in there. This was put together back in July of 2018. Not much has changed since that point in time. Legislation changed this process greatly several years ago, but that goes clear over to page 55. If you have questions about that, let me know. I would be more than happy to talk about that to you and through you. The other one that we get into a lot here is sometimes we get into some difficult employee situations, starting on page 57. Again, this is the rules and the laws that we do our best to follow along the way. Okay? And so, again, just a lot of information there along the way. Starting on page 61 on is just a variety of different pieces of information for you. And I'm going to flip you to page 65. This is the parliamentary procedure reference guide. All right? I always have a copy of this with me here at my place, just in case we ever get into a situation where one of these situations arise. This is what we follow. These are all the parliamentary procedure guide. This is rules, whatever you want to say, that you follow as a board member when we come here. Okay, so as we run board meetings, this is the process of the board meeting itself that we follow. Okay, then I knew this would be of great interest of you currently. Starting on page 67, it's the school board candidate election procedures. Just so you know, those are the rules that we're currently adhering to and following in this process, okay? So I wanted you to be able to see all of that. It's pretty complex when you look at it all together on a few pages of all the rules and regulations that we follow at this point in time. Pages 69 to 74, we have to follow the Indiana Open Door Law as board members and as a board collectively. And so that is spelled out for you about what that all means in those 5 pages. Our school board attorney is sitting right behind you, Mr. Wiley. Many times when we get into some very specific pieces of legally what we can and can't do, Mr. Wiley and I will have a conversation. Mr. Roth and Mr. Wiley will have a conversation as board president. Mr. Yager and Mr. Wiley might have a conversation as vice president. But just so you know that we will always, in this school district, adhere by those rules. Starting on page 75, and I'm about done, then we're going to let you ask any questions. This is a really important section for me because it defines your role and my role in these 8 areas. And I really want you to take some time over the next few days and read this, and then if you have questions, call me. We'll sit down. We'll talk about it. I have had many conversations with current board members about whose role is that, right? So when you look at future planning and growth, and this is taken straight from the Indiana School Board Association again, what's the board's role in that, and what's my role in that? Now, you may agree with some of that. You may agree with all of that. You may agree with none of that. But when I'm thinking about my relationship with all of you as a group collectively and with you individually, this is kind of my roadmap. This is what I have in front of me a lot. What should I be doing? What are my expectations of you? What's your expectations of me? And sometimes when we have a disagreement in that, I will pull this back out and say to you, in policy, on page 77, the first 4 items are your responsibility and the next 7 are mine. And you may say to me, well, I don't agree. I think we as a board should have, and again, this is where we'll have our discussion of who's responsible for doing what. This is what you can hold me to. This is what I can hold you to. If we're working well together, we're working through these processes. I try to stay out of your lane. I do. You will hear me say from time to time, that's not my lane. That's you all. That's your lane as a board. That's not my lane. Sometimes you may say to me, I think that we should be doing that. And I will say to you, I think that's my lane. I think I should be taking care of that. And on these next few pages, you can look at those and say that. I mean, we've already had a conversation about page 78 today. It's healthy. It's positive. It's good. That's how we get to where we need to be. What's the role of the school board? What's the role of the superintendent? I think those are really, really healthy conversations to have so that we understand who's doing what and who should be doing what. But I'm not going to read those to you. You can see student on page 79 where it talks about student achievement. This is the board's role. This is my role as a superintendent. We try to spell that out. On page 80, what's the role of the board on personnel-related items, and what's the role of the superintendent? It's not uncommon in my 15 years of doing this as a superintendent on these pages that we don't sit down and have a discussion. That's okay. That's how we get better. That's what we do. But I want to clearly define what your expectations as a board of me are. I don't want there to be any surprises. I will always promise you. It kind of takes us back to our previous conversation. I will never surprise you, ever. That's my promise to you. My goal and my promise to you is never surprise you. I hope the current sitting board, I'm looking at you, making sure I've held true to that. I'm kind of looking at you, making sure I've done that. But I also, guess what I'm hoping what you promised me. I hope you never come to a board meeting and surprise me. Or I hope you never come to a public meeting and surprise me. Because I would never do that to you, ever. I promise you. I will treat you with the utmost respect, whether we agree or disagree. I will always do that. So over on page 81, we are fortunate this year. We have 2 of our HCTA presidents, and sitting there in the back is that we're not going through negotiations this year. Yes, so we are happy campers here this year. I can't say that for my colleagues necessarily across the state who are having fun right now, but we are happy. But again, what is your role in those contract negotiations? And then what's my role as a superintendent? When we negotiate next year and we have a new board that's seated, I'll be talking to you about this page on page 81. Okay, this is what I'm doing. Are you guys still comfortable with that? You know, this is what I need from you. This is what you need from me for that to happen. Okay, I've said a lot. Comments, questions? Comments, questions? Yes, Curtis.
Yeah, I greatly appreciate the questions on the fiscal aspects. But I got a couple questions here going all the way back to page 7.
Page what, Curtis? I'm sorry.
Page 7.
Okay, 7. Okay.
The safe, orderly, and caring environment.
Mm-hmm.
Strategic plan. I got 2 questions. One, is there consideration to be bringing an in-house canine unit into the high school?
It was just done this week.
Good.
It was, right, Chuck? I remember it was on my, it was just, they had a lockdown this week and they did it just this week. So I can tell you that. I'll check and get back to you, but I'm almost certain it was this past week.
That's
Okay.
excellent. And second, is there a consideration for teachers that would like to have video cameras in their classroom to have those installed?
Yeah, Chuck, you want to talk about video here?
Yeah, great question, to be honest with you. Ms. Brown's back there, and those conversations happen in a wide variety based on, in your past, I think, discussions on virtual education here. Those discussions came up as well on kids that want the in-person instruction. I understand there's a safety. I understand they're multi-pronged on your question, but I will tell you, we visited a couple schools that do have them recently, and those discussions do take place. The purpose of them needs to become clear if that were to happen. We have not openly discussed. We evaluate what other districts do, Curtis, and see if that's in the best interest of our kids and our teachers. And so literally, Len, last year at some point, we visited a school that did have them and were active. And I think they served a variety of purposes. Most schools do not. And so those are things I'm intrigued by as well, on whether they're in the best interest here or not. I've not openly, I've had private professional development discussions has been the focus on that, on virtual education. So, good question.
One more question also. When it comes to, let me double check here, I marked it. Shared leadership on page 10 in the rubric here. Is there any consideration to administration evaluations?
Yes, we have to do them, but be more specific, Mr. Hines. What would you like to see?
By an outside entity.
We have never done that. Here's what I'm saying to you again. As a board, you have a lot of latitude and to make some of those suggestions and set that direction. But no, we have not had a third party come in from the outside to do administrative evaluations. I'm assuming you're talking about this level, but I don't know.
Talking about building level and upper level.
Okay, no, I'm not aware of a place that's doing that, but doesn't mean that we can't have a conversation about that, but I'm not aware of any place that's doing a third-party type style evaluation on administrators. Maybe you are, I'm not, so.
Well, I'm not aware of any place doing it either, but we can be a pioneer on that front, I think.
Okay.
It'd be a good thing for our community.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay, on page, I wanted you to see, our relationship with our teachers is vitally important to me. Starting on page 85 is our current contract between us and the Teachers Association. You can see the next several pages of that agreement. I am proud of the work that we have done together. It has been long, hard work to get to this point. I will also tell you the collaboration that I can speak for me, the collaboration that we've had with our association the last 2 years, I think has paid huge dividends on both sides of the aisle. I'm specifically proud of teacher compensation and how we have helped close that gap over the last couple of years. It has been a heavy lift. There have been some really hard conversations, but what I deeply respect is how we've come together and figured it out. We really have. Not to say we always agree again. We have our disagreements within that, but I'm proud of the relationship we have. We've worked really hard at it. We really have. And I think it's paid significant dividends on both sides of the table for us to keep those conversations going. You need to know, by law, we're not required to have discussion meetings. You need to know that this board and I we haven't wavered. I think that would be wrong for us not to continue the conversations with our teachers on a consistent basis. I just would not be in favor of that happening, and I think it's paying us, again, dividends on several fronts. Now, sometimes these meetings are really interesting, and sometimes we have some pretty interesting disagreements. But what I appreciated about it, we stay with it until we come to some compromise, and we do. It's not always fun, it's not always easy, but it seems like we can get to a compromise all the time. And sometimes it takes us a while to get there, but we will eventually get there. I just don't see having an adversarial relationship with our teachers gains us anything. I just don't see the plus in that. Who's negatively impacted is our kids in the long run, and we just can't have that. And so I appreciate the support of this current board in walking down that road with me. But listen, when you get to page 107 in the comp model, okay, I don't expect you to understand that. That is really, really complicated. But I would be more than happy to sit down with you. But here's a classic example of the law we have to follow, and it has to read like this for us to get it through the Relations Board. It has to be this way. Otherwise, the state will not recognize our agreement, and then we have some horrendous penalties to deal with by having it not follow this format. So please understand, I'm not trying to be, matter of fact, I would think Mandy and I would all agree if it wouldn't look like this, we'd be all much happier. But this is what we have to do. And Becky will tell you too, it's crazy at times. And if you'll see how the steps are there and how the academic needs are there, and then on page 109 and 110, the levels, and you're going to ask me, why is there so many charts and why is there so many levels? And I'll have to sit down with you and literally painfully go through that. But that has to be that way. Otherwise, the state will not approve it, period. That's just the easiest way for me to say it to you in a group meeting. Board, I know you've been at this a while with me and with Becky, and I appreciate your support, but it is hard to understand. It is, but we're compliant, and we have gotten through with minimal problems. Matter of fact, ours is probably one of the cleaner ones around. From time to time, you'll have a conversation with me about extra pay schedules. That's on page 113 moving forward. That's also negotiated, just so you know. That's all done, and that goes over to page 119. Lastly, my section, and then I am done, okay? I am finished. I was going to try to get done in an hour. I'm right there. Okay. Sometimes some of you ask me about my background. I don't talk much about it. Okay? I just don't. I don't know if it's that important. Most people don't care, quite frankly. But you as a board, and especially new board members coming on May, on page 121 to page 129, that's me. That's the history of John Trout in the education profession. Okay? That's just, it is. If you want to talk about any of that, I'm happy to do that. But if you don't, I completely understand, and I'm not offended in any way, shape, or form. But I thought it was important for those of you who may be elected to understand a little bit about where I come from and what I'm doing. Okay? Before I turn it over to someone else, comments, thoughts, questions from me? Anything?
I'll reiterate, Mr. Trout, the section from ISBA on the roles and responsibilities of us and you.
Yeah, what page on?
75.
75, okay.
Through 82.
Yep.
I think this is probably the most misunderstood thing about what we do from the
Correct.
community's perspective.
Mm-hmm.
And when I started on this board 8 years ago, the two groups did not understand these roles and responsibilities.
What do you mean by two groups?
Us and you.
Okay.
Well, not you, but
Yep.
us and the superintendent.
Yep.
I think my predecessors on the board did not understand these. I think that superintendents in the past have not understood these.
Correct.
And it didn't work.
Mm-hmm.
And And I pride myself, I think we all pride ourselves now, that we have a working relationship because we can follow this model.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the community doesn't understand this.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that the community has this perception that our responsibilities are a lot more than they are, and likewise that your responsibilities are more than they are.
Mm-hmm.
When really it's this complex system of different lanes of responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm glad that you put this in here because this is a really important section
No question.
for board governance.
No question. I consider us a we. Not a you and I, but a we. And sometimes that's misunderstood out in the public. I take my job really serious of promoting you and what you do and what you stand for and who you are. And collectively as a group, sometimes that can be really hard and really difficult. But I come at this as a very collaborative model. You've heard discussion, you've heard talk, you've heard meet, you've heard whatever. My case in point is, why do we do this? It's my opportunity to start building relationships. It's your opportunity to start building a relationship with me. And those are important. And that's why I try to define and why I believe what ISBA pulls out, because sometimes the real big time misunderstanding is who's doing what in what lane. And if I'm not doing what you're expecting me to do, I want to know that. I really do. I mean, it's important to me to understand that. But I hope you give me the same courtesy the other way. The other way. Because kids the bottom line is we're trying to do everything we can to help kids. That's just the bottom line. Mr. Richards.
Is there this is all publicly available information.
Yeah.
Is there any reason that this isn't on the corporation website?
No, it's not. That's a whole nother topic. Kenny Butler, who was just here just a little bit, he's right over there, and who helps me with all the public relations and everything else. What's too much? What's not enough? What do we put? What don't we put? Those are conversations the new board and I are going to have when we're promoting what we're doing. This type of stuff is important, but is it more important than what we're? You know what I'm trying to say.
Right, and even if it's just a link to a
Sure.
state website
Sure.
versus keeping the metadata
Sure.
on your own servers,
Sure.
but getting it out there
That's
just so
perfect.
they have
Yeah,
a
we could-
place to
we-
read and understand.
Good, thank you. No, answer your question directly is sure, absolutely. We could put it out there. I mean, there's no reason why we can't. Matter of fact, Cindy and I, just to make sure we had the latest data, we pulled it right off the ISBA website. We put this together last week, and we were on there just making sure. So, yes, to answer your question directly, absolutely, we could. Okay? Anything else? Yes, Mr. Lentz.
Yes, I appreciate Mr. Yarger's comments. And what's playing in my mind right now is sort of a zoom way out, large, big picture issue. And that is that from roughly 1850 until 1970, we had a township system of schools. And I grew up in that system, and I taught in the last of Indiana's 90-some counties that had that system,
Right.
as you know.
Right.
Now, starting with the Department of Public Education that was established in the 1980s or 90s, we have education control from the top down. You can no longer get on the phone and call your township trustee and talk about a problem that you're having with a teacher or an issue and meet with them. It's usually somebody you knew from Rotary Club or church. You could sit down and have coffee with them and talk. Now you would have to go to Indianapolis to get permission to go to Washington, D.C., and you would probably never get a chance to talk to anybody that could affect locally. So one of the things that is kind of daunting about becoming, if I'm elected a school board member, is that there's some serious limits on what school boards can do for their constituents, the citizens because of this situation that we're in now. It's very un-American, and it's not anybody's fault here. But that's just a thought that I have, that there's a limit to what a school board member can do, and I think that's part of what the general public doesn't understand, because we're used to having influence, but we don't necessarily. Yeah.
Right. Trying to not make this too political, so that's why I'm pausing. It's when I go down to Indianapolis and we lobby as a superintendent organization, I'm always fighting for more local control. I believe that we in this community can make the best decisions for our kids. And what frustrates me greatly from my seat is how it appears and it seems that so many times more and more is taking away from us. You know, if you think about what school boards can make a decision for back in the 80s and 90s and what school boards can make decisions on today, it's greatly restricted, because so much of it is either mandated statewide or federally. And so it's in the 15 years that I've been a superintendent, new school board members after a year always tell me what's so frustrating to me is I thought I could make decisions on this and I'm not allowed to because so much of that control has been taken away from us. And you couldn't be, Archie, you couldn't be more right. In just the 15 years I've been a superintendent, what school boards were allowed to make decisions on 20 years ago and what they're allowed to make decisions on today has just been so restricted. I mean, when I'm in the community, people say to me all the time, well, why didn't you do this? Well, we couldn't even make a decision. I mean, that was dictated to us, you know, so much of what we can do. And when Becky talks about the finance, we really have been restricted on decisions of what we can do with our money, which she and I vent to each other all the time. Doesn't do us any good, but we vent to each other. So when I go to Indianapolis or I say, would you come with me, and we go talk to legislators, every single message I send is, we need to make this a local control issue. And so much of that is just being taken from us along the way. So thank you. Anybody else? Anybody else? And I'll move us on. I'm trying to be mindful of time. Okay. Mr. Peters, you have the next section. Jay, how long you been in Huntington County Community Schools?
This is 32 years.
32 years.
Yes.
And so we're glad to have you. So anyway, so go ahead, Jay. Walk us through elementary data.
Tonight, let's just do, can you hear me?
You got to slide that mic a little closer to you.
Here
there you go.
Let me just give you a little brief snapshot from the elementary picture that I have the opportunity to work with each and every day as a director of elementary education. I've given you some slides there as we talk about iRead3 and iLearn data. Again, as we've talked about our vision and mission as a district, our more purpose continues to be as a district to educate all students with high standards with precision, personalization, and we wrap that with professional learning as we move forward. But let me share with you, we need some excitement, so let's celebrate, okay? Maybe I'll get an amen out of this, maybe, possibly. Our students are required to take what's called an iRead3 test, all third graders. And what we did last year was opted in our second graders to take the iRead3 test, which proved very valuable as it's a foundational reading skills test. What they have done now is they have said now all second graders for the spring of 2025 is going to be mandatory, and they've changed it from iRead3 to just an iRead test. And so all second graders and all third graders will be taking the iRead test in the spring of 2025. But you can see there in the graph, you can see our district average was 84.4%. State average is 82.5%, so we're above the state average. I didn't hear an amen. We got to celebrate something, can't we? Oh, wow, let's fire up here. Come on. Our goal as a district, and we locked on with the IDOE, that 95% of our third graders, students, would be proficient when they take the iRead test by 2027. This aligns with our strategic plan that Mr. Trout has laid out for us, that for our K-12 students, they'll be reading at or above grade level by 2029. And that is a huge task. That is not easy. Our teachers, our elementary teachers work very, very hard. Our administrators work very, very hard, because you'll hear me say this a lot. Kids have got to be reading at or above grade level by the time they leave third grade. Let me repeat that if I stuttered. Our third graders have got to be reading at or above grade level by the time they leave third grade. If we don't, if they are not, we may have lost them for their career. So you can tell I'm pretty passionate about this. I get pretty fired up. Let's rock and roll, because we have got to help our kiddos learn how to read. We do. And so we applied through the IDOE for a Science of Reading grant. The district was awarded $403,000 to be used for resources, materials, professional learning for our K-3 teachers, interventionists, resource teachers, to help them and to help us with that goal. Now, we'll take that test in March. Students who do not pass, and this is something that has just come out from the DOE. Mr. Lynch, you talk about how things do change from the DOE's perspective. We sent a letter out to all kindergarten through third grade parents prior to October the 1st, stating that now the state law requires that if their child did not pass the iRead test, that they would be retained in third grade. Now, I want you to catch your breath and think about that. Now, they do have 5 exceptions to that rule that I won't go through, but there's 5 exceptions that a student wouldn't be retained. So thinking in terms of what that ramification is going to be, the importance of kids reading at or above grade level, the work that we put in each and every day to help them be successful moving forward is key to the work that we do.
So I'm going back to state control versus local control. That was dictated to us just this past summer. So I had a couple parents that contacted me not real happy about that rule, and that's one that we don't have any control over. That has been dictated to us now. Now, there's a few exceptions. I think, what'd you say, Jay, 5? Yeah.
5, yes.
But that's just, I'm just want to give you one of the recent examples of something that's been dictated to us from the state level that we will do. Now, we'll follow the law, we'll adhere to it, we'll do everything in our power to make sure that our kids are not caught in this. But the research is crystal clear about school retention, about student retention. If you retain a student in kindergarten and first grade, the chances of them having a successful retention are very high. If you retain a student in grades 2 and 3, research will tell you that when they see the same information again for the second year, their scores will jump, but when they go to the next grade level, they'll dip back down again to where they were previously. There's a lot of case study about that. What I don't want to have happen to our second and third graders is to get caught in this law, because I think it could not be a positive piece for them along the way, because research will tell us that their scores will jump in year 1, but they'll fall back down to the previous level when they move on to the next grade level for the first time. So that's just, I wanted to bring that up as one of the most recent examples of something that we are dealing with as a school board along the way. So Jay, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, that's fine. Let me share with you a fact. Right now, our 4th grade class of 377 students were kindergartners when COVID hit and we shut down. Right now, of those 377 students, and I share this with you because the daunting task of our work that's cut out for us, of those 377 students, 143 of them right now are not reading at or above grade level, and they're 4th grade. So the work is hard. It is not easy, but we, with precision and personalization, with small group instruction, with the things that we've implemented in our elementary curriculum, we are going to get there. Let me share with you some iLearn data. This is grades 3, 4, and 5. You can see there, the red is HCCSC.
What page you on, Jay? What page?
I'm sorry. 134, I'm sorry.
134, that's okay,
I
thank
was
you.
looking at my own notes and we're looking at your 134. You can see the red is HCCSC, the blue is the Indiana State average. 2 years ago, we adopted a math curriculum, a new math curriculum. That ramped up the rigor of instruction. It was hard. It was hard for students. It was hard for teachers. But we stayed the course, and we are starting to see and reap the benefits of that work that our teachers and students put forth to make that happen. And I applaud them for that. iLearn has also changed. iLearn was also taken in the spring. It now is, there are 3 checkpoints. The first window is opening right now. September has been open. September to November is our first checkpoint. November to February, February to April. So there'll be 3 checkpoints that our students will have an opportunity to show us what they know, and then we'll be able to take that data and then develop remediation and support for students, and then be able to reassess them to see if they've mastered those standards at that grade level. So we're excited about what that's going to bring for us, and the data that will bring to show us what our kids know and what they don't know, and then how do we go about programming for them. The next page, what I've done is I've thought it would be interesting for you to see some cohort data. What you're going to see in the slides, the next few slides, this is comparison groups. It's based on demographic location, enrollment size, and social economic status or free and reduced lunch percentages. So you can see that Salamone and Andrews are in the same cohort, but you can see the schools that are listed there that have the same demographic location, enrollment size, and free and reduced percentages. And so I just share that with you just as for your own knowledge. The next slide is Flint Springs. You can see their cohort group, not as large as Andrews and Salamone. The next one is Horace Mann, and so on, but I thought that would be interesting for you to see where we are as schools in our district, how we compare to other schools across the state.
Mr. Peters?
Yes.
Could you explain a little bit more about those comparisons, so make sure everybody understands that enrollment's the first number, and then what are FAR, ELA, at the top of the, just so we understand a little bit better. I'm on page 136.
ELA is English Language Arts.
Okay.
MAT is math, and then they have the percentage for the both, and then the enrollment size, and then the free and reduced lunch percentage.
Thank you.
So what the state does now, they compare us with like schools. So if you look at that, if you look at all the indicators there, we're pretty similar, and then that's how they determine who your cohort is. Then in that cohort, then how did you score compared to other schools like you? So they put those together. So before in the past, if you remember, they just clumped us all together. Didn't matter. Those variables didn't matter. I do appreciate what the state has done with this. This is really good because it helps us compare ourselves to others. Mr. Lentz?
I'm not okay with this comparing us with other schools. I mean, it can be part of the picture, but I think if I were to communicate with school District 6 citizens, I think the best way to communicate to them how the kids are doing would be, what do they know? What should they know? What kind of things do they know in math and science and reading and writing and arithmetic? Comparing them to another school doesn't tell me that. And I think that's what people need to know. My father had a 4th grade education. That's as high as he went. And I could put an 1883 5th grade or 4th grade textbook here from Indiana Series, for example. And I almost guarantee you that most of our high school students would struggle with that. So I think pegging everything to other schools is, I have a lot of questions about it. I mean, there may be some virtue in it, but I think that's the wrong way to approach it.
Well, future school boards, here's a unique challenge for us. Okay, you bring up a great point. Jay and I have tossed around heavily the issue of standards-based report cards. What does the child know and not know? What can the child do and not do? Now, some people are for that. Some people are against that. the community members I have gone out and talked to have then asked me this direct question. Then what's my child's grade? Now, and I'm being really honest I'm being right up front and honest with you. And so, as a future board, this whole piece is critical. And you'll notice in the strategic plan, we begin to address it. And so, when you start back through the strategic plan, you can see how we're going to start marching forward with just this topic. Now, I do agree that the cohort gives us is one data point, is one data point. And you need at least 3, So then you have to drill down to what's my child's reading level, right? I mean, that's just cut and dry. And that you heard Jay talk about that previously. What is the ability level of my child in math? And so then how do we report that? This is going to become a question that we're going to have to work with our teachers on is we were all brought up in the grade, right? Of the grade. But now, how do we specify that even greater so I can move Johnny from point A to point B, but what is Johnny's reading score? What's Johnny's achievement level in math, and so on and so forth. And then how do we report that? Jay, I don't want to steal your thunder, but that's really what it boils down to, right?
And as we've talked about, John, I'm not sure, going to a standards-based report card, like I say, that's a community mindset. Our mindset, we are so used to A to F, and we change that. Changing that mindset, I think, can be very difficult, but I think would be one that you look at that, you would actually know specifically what standards they have mastered and what they haven't. But I'm not sure we're ready for that yet.
Yeah, and that's a community discussion that we're going to have at some point. I just don't think we're there. I just don't. Based on conversations I'm having with a lot of people, we're just not there. Go ahead. Mm-hmm.
With all due respect, Mr. Peters, you mentioned that third graders, they have to pass these tests to go on.
Yes.
Then you mentioned 5 exemptions. Now, having taught in the school system for 29 years, I kind of have an intuitive feeling that this is more visionary and flowery language than it is substantial as far as what will actually happen, because I have a feeling those third graders are going to have their own opinions on how well it'll do. Teachers in this, I had an excellent educator, leader, principal tell me one time that, and I want to quote, if teachers had their way, every student would have a good education. But teachers only have control over one of the 3 variables that are important for student success. They're the child, the student themselves, their parents or legal guardians, and the educational staff, the classroom teachers. The classroom teachers are held pretty much 100% responsible in their careers for the success or failure, but they don't have the authority to solve the problem. As the quotation said, they would solve it. And all of these projections of in 2029 we're going to have this or that, and we must have, these are, I think it's good to have goals and work towards them. You almost have to have that. But sometimes they take on the characteristics of a pie in the sky. Because I guarantee, where were we 5 years ago, what we were guaranteeing for today? It would be a good question. So I think there needs to be a measure of reality. I am at age 76, I'm almost done with visions and flowery language. So if I get on the school board, if I get that privilege, I would like to find out how I can help get them to where they need to be, regardless of what might look good on paper or in language. Thank you.
Go ahead, Jay.
The next couple slides, 142 and 140. 142. It shows there the different tiers. Tier 1 is our core instruction, where we should be meeting the needs, and our hope is that we're meeting the needs of 80 to 90% of our students. on that slide on page 142. You can see there materials and things that we have ordered through the Science of Reading grant, the $403,000 that we received. Those are the materials that we have received that we were able to get in teachers' hands. The assessments, what we're doing in Tier 2 and 3, we've added something that's called win time. What I need now, and 30 minutes a day, each and every day, students are receiving the support that they need to help them grow and develop and master the skills that we have asked them to master. And so we're excited about that. Teachers have worked very, very hard to implement that. And so that's not only for kids. What I need now is kids that need extra support as well as enrichment. And so we're excited about bringing that to the forefront. The next slide, I think, what I've done is I've given you a pink handout, and that's basically what our elementary literacy instruction is based upon. It's the 5 pillars that you see right there through the National Reading Panel, and I just want to make sure that you had that handout. Those are the slides right there in your handout that you received, just so for your reading, you can read down through that, but that's what our literacy program is based upon here for elementary. So I think at that point, Mr. Trout, I think that's all I have, unless there's other questions.
All right, perfect. Thank you, Jay. Chuck, you want to jump us into secondary, then we'll clump this all together then?
Yes, sir. Well, thank you, Mr. Trout. Chuck Brimbury, Director of Secondary Education. I'm back in Huntington in year 3. Previously taught here and coached here in the 90s, and went to another district and have held teaching jobs, social studies job, department chair job, athletic director, assistant principal, principal, and superintendent in my past. Extremely proud of some of the accomplishments of student achievement in my past, and really, really proud to come back to Huntington with Mr. Trout and his team, Mr. Peters. Want to introduce one of the people who worked closely with me, Lynn Brown, is the assistant principal at the high school, but also does our 6 through 12 professional development, works closely with our teachers and our kids. Some of the things we're going to talk about today is intentionality of instruction. So intentionality of instruction is what purpose are we trying to do with our children? What purpose are we trying to accomplish with our teachers and educators? And at what rate, pace, and teaching and reteaching and enhancement. And those are best practices. And so I could talk, as Mr. Trout says, this is your bailiwick, I think he says. And I am super excited about the direction we're headed in Huntington. I came here for one reason, to give back to the district that took care of me early in my career, with some experience that I think will help these children be successful. That is the sole reason I came back. And I'm a child advocate, and I am passionate about student achievement. I am passionate about the culture of buildings that enhance the likelihood for the student to feel safe, secure, and successful in the classroom. And my job is to help teachers do that for our children. So when I start to show you some of the data, I tell you my background because, like Mr. Peters, I am extremely driven to make sure our children have the best education humanly possible in Huntington. And I'm going to show you a little snapshot of that, and Lynn will chime in from time to time as well. First slide that you see, and I think it's 148 in your book, is intentionality of instruction on the SAT. You're going to see a little bit about, it's interesting in our history, they value SAT and then they devalue SAT, and they're back to really valuing SAT again in terms of our universities and our how they assess our high schools, to be honest with you. And when you look at assessment of high schools, you say, well, are you vertically aligned that allow you to be successful? It's not a 11th grade test, it's a corporation test. And so are you vertically aligned to allow children to be successful in what the state of Indiana has deemed now very, very important for them? And so I look at the data of where we're at today. And if you look at on page 148 or on the screen up there, it is clear that some of the programming and some of the work of our teachers, some of the collaborative work within the departments have allowed the students in Huntington to be more successful than many, many places in the state. When I look at different areas, this is a data point. I use multi-data points when I look at, and I'll talk about many of them, and I won't get into the weeds to the level, we have a time limit here, but everything that goes into that is number of minutes of instruction, number of minutes that of intentionality of instruction based on the standards you deem appropriate for your district. We are standards-based in the secondary through and through now. We have been aligned. I walk in classrooms. I can tell you many of them, what standard they're on. I can tell you how they're assessing it. I can tell you how they're teaching and reteaching or enhancing that. That is a practice that I now see in many of the areas of Huntington. When I look at this data point, although it's only one, this prong tells me I can look at intentionality of instruction vertically in math and English, and I can tell if we're starting to go across the curriculum or not in terms of preparation for this assessment. Huntington's doing it at a higher rate than others. I've seen the intentionality of our kids when they do this. Ms. Brown, I know, started this process prior to my 3 years with the teachers and others, and Mr. Hamill as well. And so when I see this, this shows me that they're getting some of the areas that they focused on. And I think that if you looked at us and one bucket from Northeast Indiana, I think we're second among many, many schools in terms of our kids' success rate. I'm also going to tell you I'm a data person. I monitor every single week in this district in the secondary success rate, failure rate, attendance rate, discipline rate, and every rate that there is, and we put that out to our staff weekly in many, many different buckets. Success rates is the number of children that are passing all classes and what level they're passing at. Failure rate is number of children who have at least one failing or failed to master, depending on how they're being assessed, in the current subjects they're in. An at-risk group for Chuck Brimberry is, if right now I know to be true, 14.2% of the children at Crestview are now failing one class out of their 7. My at-risk group that I need focus on immediately would be that 30-some% of that group are failing 2 or more. Highly effective schools are 8 to 14% across the nation, where you feel like, at the nature of all of your children, that on the mean average, schools that are very highly academically successful somewhere fall between 18 and 14% on failure rate of at least one course in a secondary. So then you start saying, well, that's nationwide best practice. Where are we? When I got here, I saw 41% failure rates. I saw the at-risk group of 51 to 53% of that group. If you say that in a high school, at the time I ran it, that would have been 416 children that had failed at least one course. And that would have been 216 kids that were failing 2 or more courses. Your children having that kind of lack of success becomes another bucket of focus. You meet the children where they're at. And so I spend 24/7, and I have in my career, and Mr. Trout is aware of this, looking at multiple buckets. SAT is one prong of children being successful in a couple of areas. Another prong is children who are not doing well in an area. Is there a system within what they're not doing well at? Is it random? Typically not. It's usually in an area. If kids are not reading at level, as Mr. Peters said, I can predict with really close of the coursework that they're going to struggle with. Those of you who have taught can predict that as well. We know that to be true. So we're tied together vertically on success at the next level, because if they do not read at the level necessary to read one of the textbooks, online or otherwise, I can predict their struggles, and so could you. I say that because the database questions that I get are 24/7, that I think about how to make sure our kids are standards-based, are mastered at 80% or above, our success, and children who are having different stimulus that they cannot be successful in the normal, what are we doing for them? Success Academy went in. What is Success Academy? Kids that are struggling that are not discipline issues, but are struggling in the stimulus and the areas in the secondary schools that don't allow them to be successful in a 47-minute period and need a different setting that meets their needs. And so we have a couple of Success Academy school classes in the high school now. That's best practice nationwide. Huntington has that now. I sat in those classes today, and I'm passionate about this, and I see smiles, I see success, I see questions. I saw small group instruction in social studies today, Mr. Lentz, and they were having discussions about war and current events in the Middle East and trying to draw ties way back from thousands of years ago. So I say that because I get up in the morning thinking about this data in Huntington constantly of how to help these kids be in the best environment known to man. Our discipline in this 6-week quarter is down 41% and 51% in our middle schools from last year in the exact same time period. What does that mean? How's that attendance? They're in class more now. If you're not suspended, you're in class. How's the attendance? Attendance is 96.4, 97.3, and we monitor every week in our middle schools and high school. Our kids are coming to school more. Our kids are in class more. Our kids are standards-based. We're enhancing, and we're reteaching. Well, what are you teaching? We're teaching the state standards. Miss Lynn Brown and her teachers work their tails off. We're standards-based education now. We take formative assessments. Math department used to be ahead of that in Huntington. Their scores reflect that. What is a formative? It's a snapshot of how you do. How you do every 4 to 6 weeks. What have we not mastered? We have to reteach. If you don't, they move on without them. They never master it. They don't know. And so we've started that system here in the secondary schools. We opted in to the iLearn checkpoint. That was optional for us. What is that? About every 9 weeks, we take an assessment in English language arts and math that are a practice test based on backwards mapping of what you've taught and have they mastered it. And if you've taught it, you'll get a snapshot. It's not a grade. It's, hey, do you know this? And if we know it, it's going to show we know it at what rate. If we don't know it, we have blocked in best practice. Mr. Trout, Mr. Peters, and I talk about this for hours upon end. You have to block in opportunities to reteach specifically on a topic, a theme, a system, a problem, performance-based tasks, and so on. Those systems are started in Huntington across the board. You will continue to see growth. I told you when we got here, this is not new. This is best practice for our children, and we have great teachers. Everybody tells me what our kids can't do. Everybody tells me what our teachers are. That's an easy target. These kids are fantastic in Huntington. These teachers work their tails off in Huntington. And what they need is systems, which that guy has provided across the board with this thing, and people that are out working to say what's best for kids academically, what's best for them culturally, what's best for them on how their behavior. And then you got to sit down and talk to them, and you got to talk to them, and you got to talk to them and their parents consistently. We're an easy target for kids that aren't doing well. I differ on all that. Our data is going to show you if you flip to any of these pages. I look at slide 3. As you look on page 149, percent of 11th graders meeting performance benchmarks. We're above. Graduation percentage. The first cohort I looked at here before we did the internal audit was 72.2%. We were averaging 53 kids that had checked out to homeschool before we arrived that were no longer in us. That is not acceptable. Not acceptable. I don't want any of our kids choosing a different path than Huntington. I think we're the best game in town. So we cohort analyze. What do we do? Well, look at the grad rates now. We're approaching 96-something% depending on the day. We have multiple buckets for kids. We have a 1+3 college program aligned with Huntington University. We have 1,444 dual credits at the high school. These are classes that almost don't cost anything. Some do. Most of them are free. We have multiple kids that have 1 year of college education. We have the best learning center that I've personally been in by Tiffany Drummond. It is amazing what they're getting over there. Our kids are getting opportunities others aren't. I know it's easy to say what this kid did wrong or this kid didn't right. cumulatively, Huntington is doing better than other schools. We're catching them. The instruction is great instruction and in getting better. But the environment in Huntington, although we have challenges when you have 1,500 in a high school and 605 in a middle school, 511 in the other, the challenges here are less than my previous experiences here. I'm telling you, you have a good school system, and you have great kids, and you have the collective leadership of about 111 years right now with you, and I like going to our teachers' classroom. Our kids are into it. Our teachers are into it. The data, as you flip through, will show you growth, will show you areas that we're doing intentionality on 153. That is best practice nationwide. That is best practice nationwide. It's not easy. It's hard work. But I know what it looks like, and I'm telling you right now, I have a bucket full of things that say, do these things, and you'll see our kids' achievement go through the roof. And those systems are in Huntington. I'm extremely proud of it. I know what we're not good at, I assure you, and we're addressing it daily and yearly here. And so I've given you a cumulative of what we do. I've given you the data snapshot, but I've also told you some of the buckets that we do. Any questions you have on secondary or any of those things, I'll gladly talk about. That's longer than Mr. Trout probably wanted me to talk, but I love this stuff.
Okay, so questions for Jay and Chuck. Mr. Lentz.
Yes, something that you said reminded me of one of the things I wanted to bring to the table today to learn about. And I don't know if there's anything in here about it, but half of life is physical. And I haven't heard anything yet about the physical fitness program in our school corporation and how that is measured. When I first started teaching school,
Sure.
Kids didn't want to come off the playground. They come off beet red and sweating. You couldn't hardly get them in the classroom again. By the time I had finished, that was in 1976, by the time I finished in 2005, Pac-Man had come in and all of this stuff, and kids were just walking across the playground and getting hurt by walking near playground equipment.
Yeah, no question.
So, and there's a correlation between physical fitness and intellectual development. There's a connection there.
Well, the state disagrees with us, but we don't. They're trying on the state graduation exams, graduation requirements in the future, they're taking less PE in the high school. I will tell you that that's not best practice, and we know that to be true. I didn't get a vote, neither did you. But I will tell you, we are full in PE. The middle schools clearly have it. They also have recess. They also have advanced weightlifting that we're at 35 plus in every single period of the day here. We also are full in our PE classes at 30 to 40 per class per day with multiple teachers. They have to take 2 right now in their time period, but many of these kids go from what we call APC, advanced physical conditioning, go from basic to that, and those systems were put in under this board not too long ago for the APC, and they are packed here.
Where is it? Physical fitness program fit in? Is anything in here?
Well, what I would tell you, that falls under state requirements is what I would tell you. So the DOE currently has that in terms of, do we put it in a snapshot? I did not. That falls under state requirements right now. But I will tell you, APC is not required, Mr. Lenz, and we have 7 periods a day that are packed and a para that helps out because we're overcrowded.
I'll just, since you mentioned social studies, I think that's what it was. You mentioned war and social studies.
I was talking about our Success Academy. We were doing small group instruction to some kids that the regular classroom doesn't fit very well. But I saw some great things, examples today of small group instruction in our Success Academy. And those multiple buckets are invaluable in a progressive education. Got to have opportunities for kids that certain things they don't fit into as well, to build relationships to allow them to educate them. Sometimes the relationship is the first part, then we get to educate. And that particular class, we work on that as well as mental health.
Do they have the President's Council on Physical Fitness or the equivalent?
They have some version. They don't call it that anymore, but they do have, I'll just tell you, when I go down to this particular buildings, they have certain things they do for distance, certain things they do for physical. It's not what you and I would remember as regimented. It's all in the state curriculum that they cover. It's not monitored as they used to, what you're asking. They have it. It's not check off, check off, check off. It's part of their daily, part of their semester, and they have to do certain things.
I remember reading that when World War II broke out, English soldiers were pitted against Germans, and the physical fitness culture in Germany was so vigorous and so poor in England. And, you know, we're preparing, the purpose of public education is to prepare our young people for citizenship, full citizenship, good citizenship. And war always comes down to, it's a constant. War and poverty are constants in our world, unfortunately. War always comes down, even in the age of technology, to two men, usually about the distance of myself and this gentleman right here. And if our children, if our students are not physically fit, what good is it, my thinking is, what good is it to get them to all these levels of higher education, intellectual development, and they have a heart attack when they're 42 years old when they're sitting at the computer? So I haven't heard anything tonight that tells me that we have that emphasis in our school corporation here, and I don't even know if it can be done. If we have the authority as a school board to have it, I'd like to know what we can do.
Well,
But I guess to sum it up, physical fitness needs to be a bigger part of the picture than what I'm thinking it is.
And we're going to always support fitness for our kids on a variety of levels. I mean, one thing that we haven't mentioned is our JRTC program, for example. That's huge here in what we do. We haven't cut recess times down like a lot of places have because of the same things, Mr. Lentz. I mean, we have to educate the whole child. I mean, there's a lot of different aspects of and there's a lot of different components of what the whole child is. And so, and then you're kind of dovetailing into my next section here, is because challenges we have at a board is what are we going to support financially? And what can we support doing that, with compensation and all those type of things too. But I would always say to you is that fitness of our kids is vital. It's important. I wish we could have more time with it. And this is the balance. Balancing off what we're required to do and doing academic excellence versus the whole child and the development of that. I think one of the challenges we have as a school board is the demand for our kids' time. And that's hard to balance out. We have a lot of community organizations that want time with our kids. We have fitness that we want to do. We have academic things that we want to do. And time is a viable essence. And so we'll continue on down this path. It'll be interesting conversations as we try to figure out how to do everything we're doing better. Within that too. Becky, I'm going to turn it over to you. We're going to start on page 155 with Mrs. Smith. We're going to spend the next few minutes talking about district finances. And so, Becky, we'll turn it over to you.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Trout. This evening, I just put a accumulation together for you of a lot of different things. So I'll touch base on each one of these and then answer any questions you may have in between. Just going on talking about state statute and what it has to, how it is with all the finances, the compliance, regulations, requirements of law, and contracts, there's grants, everything in all of the district has compliance over that. And then internal controls, of course, we know that is a huge one for school corporations, governmental entities, and that is one thing that we have been working on over this last year to year and a half, is putting those processes in compliance, internal controls into place here. And that is a lot of the things that we've already talked about, that we have developed, the different reporting mechanisms, the presentations, the transparency of all the finances over the last year to year and a half. All of this is under the State Board of Accounts, SBOA, and they do an examination of records every 2 years, and that is due to Indiana code. Legal responsibility, that is the business office, the corporation treasurer of the district is required to be bonded and is required under laws and regulations to safeguard the accounting of the district. They are bonded positions, so the corporation treasurer, deputy treasurer at the district level is a bonded position, and then also the extracurricular treasurers at the building level are also bonded. Now, who is responsible for all this, and what is the difference between the different finances that you may or may not come in contact with a school district? There are 3 different types of financial information throughout the district. One is the corporation finance, the other is extracurricular finance, and then last but not least is PTOs, boosters, and those type of finances. They all have different rules and regulations and different interactions with the school corporation. Of course, we have to be in compliance with the Department of Education. We are also governed by the Department of Local Government Finance, and that is all of our budget process and all the legal requirements we have with our adopting our budget. And then, of course, the State Board of Accounts is our audit regulations. And then, of course, we go back to our school board policies that the school board has adopted. So going on, this is what we were talking about with the 3 different types of finance. The first one, the corporation finance, that is controlled by the central administration. That's that treasurer, deputy treasurer, the business office, the superintendent. And the second one is extracurricular, and that is controlled by the building admin in conjunction with the extracurricular treasurer, and then overseen by the central office. And then the third is the PTOs and boosters that are controlled by an outside entity. And then I'm going to do a little dive into each one of those and give you the basics on those. The school corporation's funds are considered cash basis, and I explain to everyone the difference of that. You may hear from a big corporation that has general accounting, acceptable accounting principles, the GAAP, and that is accrual-based accounting. Any school district in Indiana that is under 15,000 students goes by this cash basis accounting. And a cash basis accounting, I refer to it just like our accounting at home. You have your revenue, your job that you get money from, that's your revenue, and then you have expenses that you pay out. That is as easy as the cash basis accounting for school districts. It's an in and an out. An accrual basis is 2-part of accounting. It's more, you have liabilities, you have statement of goods, you have all those different types of things through accrual accounting. We do not have to do that through regular school accounting, cash basis accounting of districts that are under 15,000 students. We go by a fund accounting, and how I explain fund accounting is we separate it into buckets. And you'll see here we have some of those listed that are across the state of Indiana. These aren't necessarily all of ours here at Huntington. We have the education fund, operations fund, debt fund, referendum funds at some districts, art and historical, food service, and grants. And fund accounting, I kind of explain it to other people like your own account. You have a checking account, you have a savings account. I might have a Christmas club account. I might have some other vacation account, those different types of account. That is divided up with funds in school districts. And then we budget through an extensive process, and we have major budget funds that go through that DLGF, that Department of Local Government Finance, and that has a criteria that I'll go through that has a long checklist and timetable that's required by Indiana code, and then goes through different processes and adopted by the board and certified by the state. And then we have other grant funds that are approved by the federal and state level, and some local donations and other things that we have budgeted. Our food service, they go by their own budgets and regulations through the Food Association and other different types of funds throughout the district. Now here's when I was talking about the major budgeted funds. If you hear anyone talk about the past general fund, it was general fund for 40 years. So people refer to our main fund as general fund. Back in 2019, they upset the apple cart. They changed all of our funds in school accounting. So our old general fund used to be made up of 4 buckets. 2 of the buckets stayed and created the education fund. The education fund is instructional, aimed directly toward students. So over 96% of the education fund is salaries and benefits. That's your teachers, that's all the people at the building level that are directly aimed toward students. Then we had old funds that were called capital projects, transportation, and bus replacement prior to 2019. Those other 2 buckets that I talked about got moved in and created that operations fund along with the capital projects, the transportation, and bus replacement. All that moved into one fund, which is the general overview operations of the district. So that has your transportation department, your technology department. It has a lot of the central administration. It has your superintendent's department, business office department. All that is in the general overview in operations. Your custodial, those type of positions are also through this operations fund. And then you'll see some of those ancillary ones, the referendums that we talked about. Some districts have those. There's a referendum debt that other districts have. Of course, we have our debt service. Our debt service is where we sell bonds and leases to help fund larger capital projects in need. So major repair and replacements throughout the district. So when we have roofing's very expensive. So we sell bonds to be able to do that is above and beyond what we can pay with our operations fund. So that every district in the state of Indiana, school district, has a debt service fund for these same likewise expenditures that we need to do throughout the district. And then, of course, a rainy day fund, that's just like a savings account. Any excess money is saved in our rainy day fund. And then you'll see, you can read through that, I won't read through everything, the different uses and source for each one of those funds. Our main source of revenue that we have for the district for our education fund is our tuition support. That is, it has all kinds of names: state tuition, tuition support, basic grant. That is one and the same. It's a funding formula that goes through the legislative session that provides dollars for schools on a per pupil basis. That enrollment that we talk about is funded on a per pupil basis. That funding for our district runs about $38 million. From 2020 to 2024, it has raised approximately $4 million for our district. So those funds help us when we're doing teacher negotiations to be able to get the teachers more competitive wages and such. So over 65% of that money goes directly toward the teachers in that bargaining agreement that Mr. Trout talked about earlier. Then some of the other funds outside of education, our operations fund, our debt service fund, are all their revenue. Most of that comes from local property taxes. So those are our 2 main buckets of our revenue that we get for the district. And then expenditures that are allowed, of course, we talked about education fund directly aimed toward the students. Operations, already talked about those. Debt service, and then different referendums, if you've heard that around other communities. And then the other funds that have sources of revenue and expenditures, the main funds are food service fund, which is a federal program, and then other ancillary grants that are federal and state and local programs. So wanted to provide some historical data for you. A lot of this you might see through the budget workshop where we do more in depth, but I just took snapshots of this. So this is our enrollment history. So when I'm talking about that basic grant, that tuition support that we receive in our education fund, this is where that funding is calculated from our enrollment, which is called ADM, Average Daily Membership. We are on page 166, I apologize. And our funding comes in 2 count dates throughout the year. So the first count date was just this week, October 1st, and that funds the district from July 1st to December 31st. So you're thinking, well, if it goes back to July, why don't we take the count until October? Well, they are in line with some other federal regulations and different counts throughout the United States on a federal basis, so the state changed it to this October 1st date. So this October 1st date, when they solidify and certify that, there's a couple weeks that it takes to solidify and certify all those numbers. Once that's certified, they back pay districts if it was higher than what they originally projected. They start out the year, we do receive money on a monthly basis, and then they shore it up once that count is received and certified. The next count is February 1st, and that one, you'll see the history here, it's called the spring count, and that is historical data from 2018 to estimated present. And that one is a count that funds from January to June of each year. And the same thing, once that's certified, then they back either pay us, or if some districts, their enrollment goes down, then they actually withdraw and take back that money, the difference of what that calculates. Next, I wanted to show our tax rate. So this is our actual tax rate for our district from 2019 to present. And I always like to show data on the left and then a visual on the right. So you'll see, I call this type of screen here a roller coaster. So we've been kind of a roller coaster with our tax rate here at Huntington. Now our goal in the future is to keep that tax rate stable. So since I've been working with Mr. Trout and the board, we have decided on keeping that stable, and you will see that from 2024 on, we come up with an amount that we feel comfortable with in keeping that tax rate stable. What does that mean to the public? That means now you'll be able to tell what your property taxes will be from year to year based on your assessed valuation. So instead of, you'll see 2019, it was a little over $1. Then in 2020, it dipped. So of course you had some relief with your property taxes, and then all of a sudden we needed, a debt fell off, and then we needed to do some more roofing, paving, lighting, some major things throughout the district. So then we sold a bond or a lease, and it went way back up. So that is what we are stabilizing in the district, so the taxpayers will not have that big shift in the tax rate. Then you'll see here the assessed valuation. Of course, a lot of us know since COVID that the assessed valuations across the nation have continued to rise, along with a lot of other expenses throughout the nation. So this shows you the difference from 2019 to 2025's assessed valuation and the increases our district has seen with the assessed valuation. This year, in 2025, we received these rates in August for the next year. So we already know 2025. We don't have to estimate that when we're preparing our budget. And that for our district went up 13%. Now that is on the high front across the state. Others within the state range between 4 and 9%. So after this, we expect our assessed valuation to be more stable. I think this is still residual from after COVID, and you'll see how that kept on going up. In 2024, it kind of stabled off, and then 25, it went back up. And then predictions are that it will be stabling across the state in year 26 and on. In the budgeting process, it is a long process. We have a budget prep schedule that goes to the school board to let them know when we plan on having the main budgeted required statute steps. So there are 3 main steps to the budget process that the district does and that the board is involved in. The first step is when we hold a budget workshop. We give a lot of this information. We have, and you can look on our website under the departments, under business services, and you'll see the last 3 years of budget workshops. So those presentations are on our website, and then you'll see a lot of that historical data. That same evening, we ask for permission to advertise the budgets, and we must advertise our budgets on our website, so you'll see that notice to taxpayers on our website, along with the budget presentation. And then we also advertise on the Gateway transparency site. That is a public website. It's called Gateway, and that also has a link on our website to go directly to. After that, the second main step has to be a minimum of 10 days in between, and that is to hold a public hearing. So we post that notice to taxpayers. We let them know that we will be holding a public hearing on the budgets, on a bus replacement plan, and also a capital projects plan. So we just finished with that at our last board meeting. And then last but not least, it must be a minimum of 10 days between each one again. And that is where we hold, we ask the board to adopt the budget. There's some ancillary resolutions that go with the budget. And that is the last major piece of the budget. We take that information and we submit that to the Department of Local Government Finance. And they mull it over, they go through all the tax rates, they do that, they solidify everything for every district in the state of Indiana, and they're supposed to certify our budgets by the end of December each year for then the next year. Our budgets run January through December, these main budgeted funds, which is interesting when we're operate mostly on a school district for a school year, which is a fiscal year. So a lot of times we have to think of that. We have to think, okay, in 2025, which we're just in the process of doing for 2025, that is the end of one school year, the 24-25 school year, and then the other half of that budget is the beginning of the next school year. So a lot of projections go into that because, of course, we don't know what our new funding will be from the state. That legislative session will be happening this spring, but I already had to do the budget for 2025 now. So it's one of those things where we look at those trends. That's why we show you the trends, the historical data, and we go by that to prepare our budget. Then next, this is just a snapshot of our education fund and information that we share during our budget workshop and those dollars. The difference between our actual budget order, our certified budget order, and what we're advertising. And then here's our expenditures, and I always list this by type, and these are object codes. And you'll see here we're over 95% of our education fund is salaries and benefits. That is that direct instruction from all of our teachers, all of our support staff at the building level. And then here's the revenue for our debt service fund. And then what we prepare for our debt service fund is this long-range debt schedule. And this is to show you what I presented to the superintendent and to the board to show you how we want to stabilize that tax rate to alleviate that roller coaster effect for our taxpayers. So this is a schedule that I've prepared to know when some debt might fall off, what the future holds for the district, what's the board's aspirations on where they want that tax rate to be. And then I work backwards from that and create this long-range schedule. And this goes all the way out to 2040, I think it is. So we project way out for the district. Operations fund, same thing, the snapshot of the revenue that comes mostly from property taxes. And our operations fund has what's called a maximum levy. So this is another reason why we have to utilize our debt service fund. So if you're thinking, well, I thought our operations fund was all those, the custodial and repairs and maintenance, general repairs and maintenance. It is for the daily work that we do because we have a maximum amount, a levy is the property tax, that we can raise from taxpayers. So there's a cap on our property taxes for our operations fund. That's why every other district in the state of Indiana utilizes that debt service fund for major repair and replacements, because it's millions of dollars to replace different parts of the roof, for paving, for lighting, all those other things. And then also what we have here at Huntington is the property tax caps. So this is a circuit breaker tax caps that you as a property owner only can pay up to a certain cap on your property tax. Well, when that was established, we used to, as a district, get, say, whatever that calculated at a full rate. Then they put these caps in. The taxpayer only pays up to this amount, but we used to get this for revenue. That is a loss for the district. So that's what this is the historical amounts from 2020 all the way to present of what the district loses out on that maximum property tax that we get for operations. They take this right off the top before they give us our distribution of our property taxes. So we actually lose anywhere from, you'll see 1.6 million to a little over 2 million per year due to those caps. It's good for the taxpayer, but then for the district, that's where we have to look at other means like our debt service to do major renovations. And then you'll see here our operations fund expenditures by type, and you'll see how that varies throughout the different types, from supplies to salaries and benefits, utilities, that comes out of our operations fund and such. Technology, capital outlay, all those things. Then what we do is we take all this information behind the scenes. These are some forms that I have to do through that Gateway website that we talked about. And the inputs are there on the top. This is all the information that I have to gather. Budget estimates, that is line by line budgeting. So that is, okay, what are the salaries for the teachers at Salamone? I have a line item for that. What are the benefits for those teachers? Oh, what is their FICA? I have a line item for that. What is their teacher's retirement? I have a line item for that. So that Form 1 budget estimate is line by line budgeting that we go through, and that's why it takes from May all the way through September to gather that data. And then it goes into a calculation. That's where the rates and all that come. And then the notice to taxpayers, and then the resolutions that we'll be adopting at the next board meeting. So the financial information, you'll see different goals and such that we are adhering to, and that is, of course, maintaining balanced budgets. Mr. Trout talked about in the strategic plan earlier about that 15% minimum of a cash operating balance to maintain that. We're well above that, so we're right on target with that one. You'll see we talked about the maintaining the stable tax rate, a strong credit rating because of those operating reserve balances, and creating a stable tax rate that helps us when we go to sell those bonds and leases. It makes us very attractive for the banks that purchase those. We get a better rate for that. Talking about the monthly budget reports from business services, annual budget work sessions, and other information throughout the year based on ESSER, the different grants that we have, year-end analysis, cash flows, and federal grants. So that is our main corporation financing. So does anyone have any direct questions for that before I get into those other two that we talked about, ECA and PTOs? I know that's a lot of information. It's a lot to absorb, but I'd be happy to answer any questions, or I can go ahead and move on to the other two. I'll go ahead and move on then. Extracurricular. What I do here is I kind of just put a couple things on for do's and don'ts. This extracurricular is raised specifically for an activity or a fundraiser for students, for the benefit of students, and they utilize a fund accounting. And some don'ts that you cannot do through your extracurricular, that's the building level financing and record keeping, is you cannot do adult activities. PTOs, PTAs, or boosters do not go through that, and you cannot have a negative balance in those funds at any time. What that means is that's money that is collected from students for a purpose, and then expended for that purpose. So say they're going on a field trip. It might cost them $3 a person because $1 goes for transportation, that's paying a transportation bill, and the other could be, the entry to that zoo or anything like that. So that's why you collect the money and then you expend it according to what your purpose was for that extracurricular activity. And it's just talking about how the ECA treasurer, the extracurricular treasurer at the building level, is the bonded person for that. And even that between that person and the principal is responsible for those funds. And then it's overseen by the corporation treasurer and deputy treasurer also at the district level. And they have different requirements of transparency requirements that are uploaded to that gateway site on a monthly basis. So does the district. So this transparency site has their financials, it has their bank reconciliations, it has all that they're required along with the district to upload to that state website. And then here we're just talking about different things for the activities fund. What you cannot do out of that is special equipment, anything that is instruction related, because that's at the district level, those different do's and don'ts that you can do through the ECA records. PTOs and boosters, a lot of times people don't understand how this can blur the lines when there is clear Indiana code that it is a separate entity. It is an outside entity. They have their own tax ID number. They cannot funnel any of their part of their finances through corporation books. They can't at the building level or the district level. They cannot use the school tax exempt certificate. They have to have their own. So they cannot utilize. They might, of course, they support the schools. They do all those things, but they're an outside entity, outside bank account, outside tax. Everything is outside the school books. The district is not allowed to handle any of their money. We're not bonded for that kind of organization. We're bonded for the district monies and the extracurricular monies, but not PTO or boosters. So, of course, boosters, PTOs can make donations to the schools, can make donations to the district. It has parents, grandparents, local businesses, general public. It's all part of those organizations. We love them. They support us. They're wonderful advocates for the schools. And then just little tips that I've run across in my 20-year career. I forgot to mention that. I'm going in my 21st year of being a chief financial officer for a school district. And these are just some things that I've run across in my tenure of giving tips to PTOs and boosters from horror stories that I've heard. One is no ATM cards. So they should not have ATM cards where they are circumventing their own body that helps with the finances, and they should go through the regular process of approvals and that through their organization, their PTO or boosters. No cash withdrawals. They should do everything by check and all that through their books, so it has a record of it. Dual signature checks. We always suggest that they have 2 signatures to help with any kind of fraud in case someone would have a need and make a poor choice. And then you'll see all these different things that if you have unaccountable money, what to do, all those do's and don'ts for tips for PTOs and boosters. Now, I know that's a lot of information for finance. We have different things, like I said, that we provide to the school board, everything from cash flows to now to board financial statements that have the graphs and the data with them, regular presentations throughout the year, and an annual presentation also. And we present all this information through a board meeting, and also, of course, the public can witness and listen to all that. I would be happy to answer any questions. I know I'm an advocate for educating on finance. I know that we're a school district, and our biggest part is the teachers and teaching the students, but I feel through my over 20-year career that my job is to educate people through the district and community on school finances and the differences and the complexities that we have through school finance.
Okay, questions for Mrs. Smith?
I had one question on the PTO and booster financials.
Sure.
Are those supposed to be open, like the school finances, or do they have to disclose that to the public, or?
Nope, they don't have to do anything through the school. They don't have to present anything to the school. That's what makes it so complex, is that we have no oversight over PTOs or boosters. They are not regulated to have to show us anything, or the schools or the district, anything of their finances. So it's very important for their internal controls, if you're involved in that or know someone that is, that makes sure that they're doing those tips, those checkpoints, and on their own. Because unfortunately, you've seen things on, the front page of the newspapers where something has happened at a school district, and people don't understand these three different ways of financing that we have: the district corporation level, the ECA, and the PTO's boosters. They think that's part of this district's books, and it's not. So that's why I like to educate people on the difference of those three financial entities.
What is their checks and balance system that they use to be?
All of them are different, and there's no requirement. So that's the difference. So it could be a little mom and pop thing, because they might not have a lot of volunteers that do it all on their own, and they might have just a checking account at the local bank. And I've seen places that had ATM cards and that, where there was two people involved, and one started taking all the money out of the account, and the other one didn't know it because they didn't have checks and balances. So that's why I have those tips, because I have seen that over my 20-year career. So I think it's very important when we have those entities to maybe educate them, hold special education things. We can educate them. They don't have to follow it, but we can give them these tips and ideas to help them through their journey of that type of entity.
Good question.
Yeah, very
Any
good
other
question.
questions for Mrs. Smith, as we're running just right up to the time here, but we'll take any other questions you may have. Okay, Mr. Brimberry, I'm going to ask you to do the last part in 3 minutes, okay?
Gotcha. We're on the home stretch. You guys are having a good time tonight. If you look on page 191, 192, Mr. Trout, part of getting an experienced superintendent like Mr. Trout, they give you reports for the board of facility studies. So one of the things he got done, you're looking at on those pages in the next, but basically it's every building and what condition the buildings are in that need prioritized, and for long-range planning. What are your immediate needs? What are your long-range plans? You can see those for every building in the Corp. This was done by Veridian Architecture. And I would also tell you that allows the board that Mr. Trout works with, and I do, to look at what is next steps, when do you want to do it, funding match with projects. And so what you have there for your reading is to go through those different priorities and evaluations. What you see on the screen from Mrs. Gray are some different mechanical and controls replacements. As you can see, there's been 2 phases at Huntington North. Phase 1 was completed this summer, which is part of the building for HVAC. There's some ongoing now, and then another penthouse will be completed next summer. So HVAC completion is scheduled for the end of next summer at Huntington North. Rather large project from one of the things. Cindy, if you want to go ahead and click ahead. Different mechanical controls replacement pictures that Terry Thornsbury has shown the board over time. Go ahead, Cindy. That is our family and consumer science. That is their lab, and that was a part of the construction project that was just finished up at Huntington North. Very proud of that. That was one of the priorities that you'll see that has been just recently completed. We're doing punch list as we speak. Go ahead, Cindy. Phase 1 of science lab renovation. Kids and teachers absolutely love it for the board's purposes and for community. Phase 2 will be complete and is being punch list now for October 15th. And then the planetarium will be October 22nd. So phase 2 completely done, and punch list will be this month. The exterior walls, and you can see some of those things, but a lot of great work. I just love going in there. The kids and teachers are just thrilled about the academic setting. Those were in poor shape when they started. So just outstanding. Administration renovation is going on right now. Framing has been completed. They're doing rough plumbing and electrical work as we speak the next 2 to 3 weeks. Go ahead, Cindy. H&S ceiling, lighting, mechanical, PA, and piping. Those are getting ready to happen. I would anticipate those coming your way in terms of start dates right around the Christmas holiday sometime. That will take place to be finished in the next year. We had construction meetings today looking at strategically. They will do 4 classrooms at a time, which will take up to 2 weeks for those blocks. They will also coordinate that with PA installation. They will coordinate that with some piping stuff and the HVAC project that's going on simultaneously. So a tad busy around here. All of that will be completed in a timely manner by, I think, December of 25. And so we'll have this wrapped up. So we got a lot of things simultaneously happening there. Go ahead, Cindy. You can see some of the issues they're dealing. If you go in the new science or this particular one, you'll see what less lighting and more efficient and more cost efficient looks like. If you walk outside the hall, you'll see what the tunnels look like that are more lighting and less efficient and cost more. So that's an example of that. All hallways and all classrooms will be completed on the science and on the lighting and piping and ceilings. Those will all be completed except these areas due to budget. What we call the West Science now, you all would call new science, but it's now old science. It's the West area. That lighting is still up to par and will not be touched during this. Those classrooms as well are still fine. Will not due to budget. The library, art, and the field house and arena areas. Those will not be a part of the ceiling lighting and those on this phase. Okay, that'll be for future board consideration. Salamone HVAC will start this summer. They'll do the part that the kids are in during the summer. They will go to where the current administration offices and business offices so on, they will start that during the year. So it won't affect any classrooms. So that will start this summer and be completed by December of 25 is the goal. So we'll see. Hopefully that stays on budget and on task. Salamone HVAC, currently steam, I believe, and not many of those left. When we fix that, rather challenging to find people who are experts in those particular areas from the 60s still for things that we deal with down there. So that'll be great for Salamone. Restroom renovation, we should start that on your latest one. This will happen simultaneously as well as many other projects in the high school. Those will start, and keep the dates straight, I believe that will start in January and go through next December. And for that will be a year-long project. So some of that will take place during the school year. The primary ones near the kids' common spaces will take place in the summer.
And do you mind if I tag on to that? This is an example of what we're using our debt service fund for. These are these major projects that we sold those bonds and leases for that's helping us do these renovations. If not, we would not have enough funds in our operations fund to be able to do these type of things. So that's what we're utilizing is our selling bonds through our debt service. And we're doing these projects when he's talking about according to budget. And of course, we have so much money that we sold those bonds for and that we have to keep within those dollars because then we have to wait for something else maybe to come off where then we sell another bond or lease in its place as old bonds or leases come off. Then we're utilizing those dollars to do all these renovations. So that's why they use this facility study to be able to earmark what is needed next throughout the district as we do that long-range plan that I showed you till 2040.
Thank you. Mr. Trout, I believe that completes us.
So with this, when a new board is seated in January, what I want you to know is that we are going to go back through this process of facility study because it's going to be going on almost 3 years now. And so numbers change, directions of new board changes, but what we're going to do as a board in 25 is we're going to go back through that process. And then what you as a board will do is determine with all of those pages, for example, 189 to 220, what's the order that you want as a board to do the remaining projects? Okay? Now, it's not just that easy or not that simple. because what we're going to do then is to line up cost with bonds coming off and monies becoming available. And so the board in 25 and 26 is going to use those 24 months for planning for future upgrades to our facilities based on the available funding that we have, because we do have bonds coming off in the next 2 to 3 years. And so we need to be making preparations of what do you as a board want to see happen next. We still have lots of items here at the high school. We still have items across our district. And what do you as a board want to see as taking precedent over the other? And so that will be multiple meetings, multiple data gathering, multiple on a lot of fronts for us to determine, okay, what's our plan moving forward to address our facility needs. Becky will play a huge role in this and helping us to understand monies available, monies that we don't have available, bonds that are coming off. Do you lease? Do you do a GO bond? Do you do? And we'll work through all of that stuff. It will be a lot. We as a community made a decision a few years ago that a referendum wasn't the route, but we have to use the funds that are available to us. And I think that we've done a decent job at that. I think we've done a great job at that, actually. And now, what's the future hold? How are we going to do that? How are we going to do that? And I think that's why we have to look at the funds available, the needs that are met, and the things that happen. And so if you are a new board member and you're coming on, that will include tours. It'll include tours to places you've probably never been to inside our facilities, quite frankly. I'm excited about that work. It's a lot of work, but I don't want to go on 3-4 year old data to make decisions either. We got to get new estimates, we got to get new study done, and we have to look at what we got. So that's been very helpful. Questions about facility studies?
I have a quick one.
Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you. How much does it cost to originate a bond? How much does it cost to originate a bond?
How much does it cost to do the bonds?
Yeah, to issue a
So
bond.
it depends on our credit rating. So there's a lot of different variables in that. So if you're asking me, okay, what does it cost on approximately a $5 million bond of interest? It's a couple $100,000.
No, just to issue the bond, like all the legal fees, all the.
It's under $100,000. So the legal fees, between the legal fees, we have a financial advisor, and then we have a bond counsel, and then our regular staff. So that part alone, issuance fees run, I would say between $50,000 and $60,000 just for that issuance part, and them to develop all the paperwork. The paperwork, if any of you get on the board, they can attest to the paperwork that you have to sign for those general obligation bonds to meet the legal requirements in Indiana. There's lots of paperwork. If you think of a mortgage, when you're doing your mortgage, a lease is just like your mortgage at home. So when you go to buy your home and you see that stack of paperwork, it's basically that same type of thing. It has an amortization schedule. It has the regulations of the interest rate and all those different parameters. But good question.
Thank you. Others? Yes, Mr. Carl.
So we heard a lot about the education on the elementary, the middle school, and the high school. One of my questions is on the Learning Center and the vocational project. You talked about Ms. Drummond doing an excellent job, and I've heard nothing but great things about her, but we didn't really get a breakdown of anything that's going on over there.
I was running out of time. Sorry, Aaron.
No, that's fine, but that's something that I know if you got a really good program for kids going to college, and it sounds like we have a really good program for kids that aren't on the college course, and I would like a little more information on
Machining, criminology, nursing, 911, police and fire and rescue. There is so many different pathways over there, and anytime, Aaron, I'd love to take you a tour on that one. It is amazing. It's my favorite space in the school. You'd love it. So reach out to me. I'll take you over there and take you walk around with Tiffany, and you'll see all the different things they do. It's pretty extraordinary. Glad to. Any of you. I mean that. Yeah, I'd love to. It's a kind of a source of pride, in my opinion. Huntington has it, and I'm not sure they know how wonderful it really is, but coming from the outside back here, it's pretty amazing.
Aaron, what I'm planning on doing, we're in the process of leaving our current Area 18 cooperative for a variety of reasons. Mainly, two main reasons is one, it's more fiscally lucrative for us to be on our own because we're sharing program and administrative cost with school districts in Adams, Wells, Blackford, and Jay County, and quite frankly, we just have outgrown it. We do not benefit from being in that co-op any longer. And so there's going to be a board report on that sooner than later. I'm currently negotiating that process away from that. The second reason is we no longer need to share we no longer need to have students go to other districts for programming. We have opened so many new programs, we're filling them, that's also ties to the financial piece of this process too. And so what I will do in an upcoming work session is I'll make sure that Ms. Drummond comes and does a complete presentation at a work session so you all can see that. I'm just waiting until we're a little farther down the process because I know that's going to be the question that all of you are going to ask me, where are we with that? Because we've been working on that well over a year now. And so it's a fair question. It's a great question. It's our fastest growing programming that we have in the district right now is over there at the Learning Center. So thank you.
Aaron, auto body is another area over there too. They do a great job. So I'd love to show you guys.
Okay. Anything else? Facilities? Okay. Thank you. It's a lot. It's a lot. Okay. Yes.
Kathy Schock-Swingle from District 4, and I just want to reiterate how wonderful this meeting was and how informative it was, and I really appreciate
thank you.
Everybody's time.
Thank you. So, you great segue. And so, what I want to say is that seriously, if you're a current board member, I hope we were able to share information with you that maybe you learned something today too. If you're a prospective new board member, please reach out to me. I would welcome the opportunity to sit down with you further and have any conversation about any of the information in the in that. Secondly, seriously, if any of you want to go through the Learning Center, please reach out to us. We'd be more than happy to take you over there. I was embarrassed when I started working here 2.5 years ago. I can't tell you how many times I've driven up and down Jefferson Street and didn't realize what was going on. Truly did not understand what the programming going on in that building. It's absolutely amazing what our kids are doing and the opportunities they're having graduating from here to do that. So please reach out. But I would welcome the opportunity to meet with any of you moving forward. Don't hesitate to reach out to me and go through any of this information or anything else that might be on your mind. Thank you, everyone. Becky, Chuck, Jay, Cindy, thank you. Appreciate you guys for your evening, and we'll see you all soon. Take care.
May I have a motion to adjourn the meeting, please?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?